I think what Japanese voters have seen in Prime Minister Takaichi is someone different to the usual run of leaders that Japan typically has. She's female, she's optimistic, she came from a very different background to the usual kind of patrician male prime ministers that Japan has got used to. This landslide victory will help Takichi cement the alliance with the United States. She's extremely pro-US, and I think, yes, as other allies around the world, particularly those in NATO, are rethinking their ties to the US, and Japan is doubling down on them. It is a country, after all, that is, in the neighborhood of Russia, of China, and of North Korea. I think that Takichi's goal is to make Japan indispensable to the US in lots of different spheres, whether that's through defense, whether that's through technology, whether that's through money and investment in the US.
Our defense spending must reflect the dangers and threats that we face today. Because deterrence doesn't come on the cheap. Just ask the American taxpayer.
Well, what we know is that the US is asking allies in Asia and in Europe and elsewhere really to shoulder more of the burden of security in their particular regions. And I think that's a message that Takichi is extremely receptive to. She has already raised defense spending in Japan to 2% of GDP, I think a year or so ahead of schedule. They're certainly both pushing in the same direction on that. I think Prime Minister Takichi's stance towards China is popular with voters. She's perceived as being standing up to Beijing, which is perceived as bullying Japan for really a remark that, if anything, only stated what to many people is just an obvious point. It's maybe a different story with business leaders who I think are much more anxious about the relationship with China being, smooth and going well, to make sure that economic interests of Japan aren't hurt by this. Prime Minister Takaichi is very much a fiscal dove, a fiscal activist. She wants the government to borrow money, to spend, to finance investment in Japan, to finance tax cuts, to really try and drag the economy finally out of this stasis that it's been in for 35 years or so. Her predecessor, Shinzo Abe, tried something similar with a bit of success, but the difficulty is that Japan currently is in a very different position from what it was then. The reason this makes investors and economists so nervous is that there's questions about whether Japan can sustain the kind of deficit-financed spending that it is looking at, whether it can really borrow much more given where debts are already, and whether there will be extra pressure on the currency which will fuel inflation as she borrows more.